Michael Mott
and Friends.
live at home.
The national conversation about race continues in this country. In the last show, I shared that I have a personal responsibility to bring awareness, educate, and inspire through my music. I wrote this song for my second album, Abandoned Heart, and it was recorded by the phenomenal Anastacia. The lyrics feel extremely resonant with what's going on in the world today. There in the dark, with the pain in your eyes, love is standing by. You, with the strain, with the weight of the world, wipe those fears goodbye. Funny, I once was you, blind, but now I see. 'Cause I saw the light when love opened my eyes, revealing more than me. More than me. More than me. More than me. Here, take my hand, take the light in my eyes, and lay your burdens down. We are one by the sun and the skies, so let your troubles drown. Oh, fun, who knows why some people choose to turn from unity. But here I am, with wounds from the war, revealing more than me. 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 The hunger for love will keep us alive. Reach for my hand so we can survive. Give all I got to give all I can. More than I was and more than I am. Love is more than me. More than me. More than me. More than me. More than there in the dark, with the pain in your eyes, love is standing by. Hi, everybody. Woo! So, like I said, that is a song I wrote for my second album, Abandoned Heart. And I revisited it recently, and I was kind of struck with how much the lyrics resonate with what's happening today in the world. And me as a white man singing this song to the Black community is kind of how I feel when I revisited it, and I wanted to do it tonight on my show. So welcome back. We do these shows every 2 weeks. And 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with Nathaniel Hunt. And the conversation was, I was terrified to do it, but I knew I had to and I wanted to. And the feedback and the response that conversation received and the conversations that it started has been so beautiful, and the messages I've received have been so beautiful that I knew I had to continue this. And I don't want these Michael Mott Friends concerts to turn into something that they're not, or something that is not authentic to who I am. But I do think it would be completely tone deaf to not be having these conversations right now. And, you know, I am a songwriter. And like I said a couple weeks ago, my best work comes from having conversations. So I want to continue having these conversations, and I want to feature and focus on people that I have worked with, people that my audience knows, and hopefully you get to see them in a new light. So that being said, I'd like to bring up my very first guest. He grew up in South Florida, and he's been singing in Michael Mott and Friends shows since 2016, and he is heavily featured on Abandoned Heart. You can hear him on Complicated and Get Up on My Feet. Sorry, I wrote the song. Cool. He's doing a lot of the background harmonies, and he is just a beautiful human being in a beautiful light. So please welcome Mr. Damian Barray.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Where are you?
Right now, I am quarantining in Ogden, Utah with my family.
Ogden, Utah. You're from South Florida.
Yes.
But you're living it up in Utah, of all places.
Yes, living it up as much as I can. Ogden's a pretty quiet town, but there's stuff to do.
Okay. So, I mean, we haven't seen each other in a moment.
Because it's been a while.
COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then we're all sheltering in place / quarantining. And here we are now. And all of this is happening with race in America.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a post that I saw that said, go check in on your Black friends. They are not okay. And when I saw that, it really hit me. And I started texting everyone that I knew that I could think of off the top of my head. And I checked in, and I was just asking, how are you feeling? How are you doing? How's it going? And you got back to me immediately. How are you feeling right now? What's going on?
I'm doing okay now. Towards the beginning of everything kind of happening with George Floyd, also even before that with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, it was all very overwhelming at first.
Yeah.
And there were a couple days where I was kind of just really, really exhausted and kind of burned out from having difficult conversations with people about race and about what was going on and what was happening with the protests. And it's kind of been in flux. For the most part, I've been okay, but there have been a couple of days where it was tough.
How are you having these? So you are, both of your parents are Black, your family's Black, correct? Mm-hmm. Who are you having these conversations with? It's outside of your family.
Right. But also in my family as well. I have a 10-year-old niece who is biracial. My brother was Black, of course, and then her mother is white. And my brother passed away in 2015. So she's been living with her mother, and she's been watching the news when we watch it. And I think, of course, she's had questions about, why are people so angry and why are people in the streets protesting? And, we've had to have conversations with her, and her mother has also had conversations with her about, what's going on and what's, what the state of racism is in this country. And for someone that's 10 years old, in general, that's not always something that you're really aware of. But I think also with her being a biracial child and living with a white mother, it's maybe not something that is at the forefront of her mind. I think a lot of it was very shocking to her to see what was going on in the news and what was happening.
Where did she live?
She lives in South Florida.
In South Florida.
Yeah, but she's staying with us for the summer.
And I mean, you're in Utah, which is like, it couldn't be whiter.
Yeah.
A lot of time in Utah, and I love Utah, but I mean, it's a very specific demographic there. I mean, how do you feel being a Black man living through this moment in history and being in Utah?
I mean, I don't really have that many interactions with people just because, we are in quarantine. But generally everyone's really nice. It's a small town. My mom and my sister, they love it here. Everyone's very friendly. I think a lot of the people that live in Utah are a little bit more traditional in that they're very polite. It's not like New York where, everyone kind of has this wall up. It's very common to go into a store and have a conversation with people, and the people checking you out will talk to you, and it's just very kind of old-fashioned in that way. So people are very nice and polite. I haven't had any experiences that made me feel unwelcome or anything. That's
great. I want to actually talk a little bit about your niece. How are you having that conversation with her? Because having a white mother and having that experience is obviously completely different than having a Black father and Black family members. And what's going on in the world right now, how are you having that conversation with her, and how is she receiving it?
I think in general, with everything that we talk to her about, we try not to sugarcoat things or to dumb things down. She's 10 years old, but she's very intelligent. I think most 10-year-olds are much more intelligent and aware than people might give them credit for. So we just try to be, as straightforward as we can be while keeping in mind that she is 10 years old. We don't hide anything from her, but we also don't want to make her feel any really overwhelming emotions. We want to make everything as digestible as possible for a 10-year-old.
I recently learned, because this is a time for me, I'm just learning and listening and being educated as much as I can. And I learned recently about the conversation that some Black people have with their children about the police at a young age. And I was shocked to hear that, because right there is the epitome of white privilege. I never knew, it never occurred to me, never crossed my mind, I never thought about it. Are you having that conversation with her? And did your parents have that conversation with you?
I personally haven't had that conversation with her. I'm not sure if she's had that conversation with her mother or not. I'm sure that she has. And when I was younger, I don't specifically remember a time where I was sat down and told, if you encounter the police, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. I don't have like a specific memory of having like that talk, but it was definitely something that I was aware of and that I did have conversations with my family about, not necessarily as it related to me, but the things that we would see in the news or what would happen to other people. So it was something that was always in my consciousness.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with everything going on right now, and oh, by the way, I need to tell everybody that all of tonight's proceeds to this show, you'll see on the scroll bar below, are going to Color of Change, which I have their Instagram handle in there. It's @colorofchange. It's all in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And my next question relates to that. What is going on with people who, I gave my own analogy last week of Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter and what Black Lives Matter means. Because honestly, I do believe that some people are still to this day confused of they think they're actually doing good by saying all lives matter.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people that still are like, well, all lives matter. And it's an innocent thing. And I'm trying my very best to patiently describe to them, okay, well, and the house burning down analogy and the broken analogy and whatever, all the analogies. But you have a different spin on that. Talk to me about what you think the misunderstanding of Black Lives Matter is about.
I mean, it's a very deep, layered topic, but I think at the heart of it is there's just a misunderstanding and a miseducation on the history of racism in America. I feel like the history that we're taught in, most of us are taught in school, grade school through high school, it's a very condensed, very watered down version of events that actually took place. I feel like a lot of people, think that slavery, it was, it ended, the Civil War ended in 1865. People kind of think, oh, well, Abraham Lincoln, he freed the slaves and slavery was done. And, then there was segregation, but Martin Luther King came in and he fixed it. And, Rosa Parks, she, didn't give up her seat, and George Washington Carver created peanut butter.
That's not even the tip of the iceberg.
No, there's so much more that happened in history. And there's a whole, I think the legacy of the Jim Crow era and segregation is something that's not focused on as much in schools, and it needs to be, because there's such a history of legally sanctioned and publicly supported segregation of Black people at every level of society, redlining and white flight and basically housing discrimination. Black people were kind of sectioned off into certain areas, usually urban cities. They weren't allowed home and business loans in near or around white suburbs. And if they did start to move into those suburbs, then there's a phenomenon called white flight, where the white residents of that area would start to move away into other areas, which caused Black property values to go down, and it would just have this huge economic impact.
Wow.
And there's a great little documentary. It's maybe like 15 minutes as part of the Explained series on Netflix, but it's also available on YouTube. And they talk about this systemic practice of redlining and how that had a huge impact on generational wealth in the Black community, because simply being able to own a home or own land is such a huge contributor to being able to accumulate wealth, not just for yourself, but for your children and your children's children. And that's just one thing that happened to Black people for years and years, even after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I believe it was still going on for years. There are stories up until the 90s of housing discrimination that was revealed. So there are so many things and so many systems that are still in place and that still have an effect on the Black community that I think a lot of people just don't know about. And if to kind of round back and answer your question, I think if you're not aware of this education and you don't seek it out, then you don't have the proper context to understand why we say Black Lives Matter, because historically there has been a lot of evidence from the government, from society, that Black lives don't matter at a very huge governmental level. So if you don't understand that, then you don't have the proper context to know why we're focusing specifically on the struggle of Black people, and specifically as it relates to police brutality.
Well, and that was so beautifully said and so succinct and so clear. So thank you for that.
Sure.
But it all goes back to the Black Lives Matter movement talking about systemic racism and how so institutionalized, it's so ingrained in our society that the people who are, some of the people that are saying all lives matter, okay, most of them, I would like to think that all people are good. And I would like to think that them actually are not aware of that. And it's crazy. So it's like, now is the time to become aware of that so that you can be the best person you can be. And I'm learning every day. I'm trying to just shut up and listen as much as I can. I like to talk. I'm trying to as much as I possibly can and listen and learn, because there's so much I don't know. And there's so much, I mean, I ordered White Fragility, and I'm very excited to read that because I want to know. I just feel like there's so much to learn. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this.
I have a lot to learn too. I don't have all the answers. There's still so much that I'm also learning about. So it's everyone has to kind of put themselves out there and learn.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I admire about you, first of all, you are one of the first people at every rehearsal. You know all your music. You learn your choreography. You got it down. You know at all times, and I can depend on you. You're just the best and so professional.
Thank you.
And one of the things that I love the most, though, besides all of that, is your positivity and your light and your optimism, and you're just such a beautiful human being. And how do you maintain that in these times? How are you so? You seem unshakable. How are you so optimistic?
It's kind of like I said at the beginning. It kind of comes and goes in waves, but I think kind of what we were saying. I think me having hope in the fact that I think a lot of people just don't know, or they don't have the proper context, or they don't have exposure to other people from different cultures or different perspectives or experiences. I think that there is room to grow and to learn for everyone. And I think that in and of itself is such a hopeful thing. And we live in such an amazing time. All of this knowledge is at our fingertips. It's so easily accessible.
Wow.
And I think at this point, it's just encouraging people to try to learn as much as they can so that they can have a more rounded perspective of what's going on, and hopefully, come around to being able to accept and appreciate everyone from any race or culture or economic status. I think that that's something that's always helpful, to know that people can just learn and hopefully grow.
Well, we seem to be getting it in small doses, and I would like that one day all of us to have it all flat out equally, rather than here's a little bit. You can't be discriminated against because you're LGBTQ. It's cool now, except if it's a small business, we can't protect that.
Yeah.
Employees are that. It's like, what the hell? Why are we? This is 2020. Why are all these conversations happening still?
Yeah.
Crazy. So thank you for that.
Of course.
So you asked me if you could sing a song.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that and why you asked this specific song?
Yeah. The song that I wanted to sing was Gold, which I've been hearing at Michael's concerts since I started working with him back in 2016. And it's just a song that I've always found really fascinating. It has a very, very simple, easy, gentle melody. It's not a very complex song. It's not range wise. It doesn't go all over the place. It kind of stays in like a similar idea, but the lyrics have such a depth and a complexity. And I feel like something that I resonated with when I was listening to this song was this idea of someone having a dream about something and having a vision of this legacy, that they would pass on to other people and that they would be able to have, but then kind of realizing that the vision that they had is almost an illusion. It's not at all what they thought it was. And I think that that's a perfect metaphor for a lot of people's experiences in the States, and, believing in the American dream, but then, realizing that you know, we're not a perfect country, and there are many things that we can fix and improve. And I think it really speaks to that.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Thank you. I love that you interpreted it that way. I had a different interpretation. I had a different intention writing it. And I love that the song, that's the beautiful thing about songwriting, is that you can touch people in different ways that you didn't expect. And I really appreciate you saying that.
Sure.
Thank you for wanting to sing it, and thank you for analyzing it that way and making it personal to you. I can't wait to hear it. I'm so excited.
Of course.
Thanks. Let's hear it.
I dip my thoughts in gold. I'm standing on a mountain. In time when I am old, I'll live to talk about this. I believe. So could I hold something real? Is life a chain reaction? Can time begin to heal? Or will I come to learn? Well, anyway. I dip my hands in gold, and now I'm underwater. Another story told to my son and daughter. I believe. So could I hold something real? Is life a chain reaction? Can time begin to heal? Or will I come to learn? Well, anyway. And in my lover's eyes, I've come to realize we're all really on our own. Yes, in my lover's eyes, I've come to realize we're all really on our own. I never had the gold, silver stole the moment. The dream was bought and sold, and I've just come to know this. I believe. So could I hold something real? Is life a chain reaction? In time will never heal, because I've come to learn. Life is a distraction. Life is a distraction.
Yes, Damian. So nice. So Damian is in a trio of my background singers, and I always hear the three of you as one. And so it's beautiful to hear you on your own. Thank you for singing that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I wanna hear your experience, and I want to share stories. And a reminder to everybody, we just got actually 2 donations during that.
Yay!
This entire show is a fundraiser basically for Color of Change, and I will leave the money open. I will leave all of my information on the screen tonight. I will make the donation tomorrow morning. So I know people catch this later. You can continue to give money through the end of the day today, which is Wednesday, June 17th until midnight Eastern Standard Time, and I will make the donation in the morning. If you are not able to give it tonight and you watch this in 3 or 4 days from now or later, go to Color of Change and check out their Instagram and make a donation that way. Cool. Damian, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your stories. And there's so much more to talk about. I didn't get to have.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
It'll be next time. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Damian Barray, everybody. Okay. My next guest is from Nashville, Tennessee, and she has been singing with me since 2013, when she was one of the first people ever to perform my song Hold Me Tight at 54 Below. She is heavily featured on Abandoned Heart as well. She is in the choir on More Than Me and The Wild Ones. And for those of you who've come to my birthday concert, which was a fundraiser for the Actors Fund in 2018, she blew the roof off of the place singing Genuine, It's Real. Please welcome Anastacia McCleskey. Anastacia McCleskey. Why have I done this wrong and can't not say your name correctly?
I don't know.
Can you please say it correctly?
Anastacia McCleskey.
Anastacia. I even spelled it phonetically because I was doing it. Hello.
Listen, you were close, and I'm not offended. I love you.
How are you too? How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Today's a good day.
Good. You look good.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're the daughter of a preacher who said we are in a spiritual war. Talk to me about this.
You know, he mentioned that to me. It was many years ago, but we were just talking about the injustice, the systematic racism in America. And we've been talking a lot about changing the hearts and minds of people and how one can go about doing that. And, you know, he kind of threw out there, this is a spiritual war. This is a holy war in a way, because we are vessels and we are being used and pulled and pushed and pulled. And also it's kind of that thing of our own spirits, you know, where is that leading you? Where are you taking it? How are you feeding that? How are you feeding your mind that's feeding that? Then has you going out into the world and affects how you treat people. So yeah, I think that's what he was trying to get at when he said that. Yeah.
Have you been having conversations with him about what's going on?
I have a few. You know, I noticed that when I talk to my father, things can be triggering for him. And within the Black community, a lot of Black people his generation, he was born in 1944. My mother was born in 1950. My mother believes in going to therapy. I'm not quite sure if my father does. So there's a lot of things for a lot of Black people to unpack of that generation that I don't think they really have. And honestly, I don't think they want to. You know, they're both from the South, the Jim Crow South. They lived through the Civil Rights Movement. And then here we are at Black Lives Matter movement. And so I try to have conversations, but then I watch his face, I watch his energy as he talks about growing up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and being one of the only Black families in the 40s on his block. And they kind of lived on a small farm in a shacky house. And how I remember him saying recently, they just didn't like us. They just didn't like us. And I see my father, this 75-year-old man, and I see the little boy in him. And that wondering of why. And he's a very religious and spiritual man in the best way, you know. Yeah. I talked more about it with my mother. We stayed up on the phone this morning from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. talking about everything.
I'm curious, what is that conversation like? Is she open with you? Is she?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and we're like-minded on certain topics when it comes to the fight for justice, Black liberation, what that looks like, what defunding the police, demilitarizing the police looks like. Sorry, the motorcycles are going by.
You're in New York, right?
I'm sorry?
You are in New York, right?
I am in New York, yeah. But we have in-depth conversations about what all that looks like, and then what our roles are going to be in that. My mother's 70, so her roles are a little different. You know, I'm in the streets when I can be, or on committees, trying to help change policies and educate people and get people to vote, register people to vote.
Good. Yeah, I just went through and texted all of my friends and was like, hey, June 16th, this is last week, June 16th, you have to get your mail-in ballot because the midterms are happening.
Yeah, the 23rd, the primary. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yes, thank you. And I texted everybody, and everyone knew, thankfully, except one person. But he put it in. So, I mean, I took an hour in the morning and just texted everybody, copy, paste, text everyone. You know, I don't care if I'm that annoying person. Times are too tough right now for us not to make it. And if I reach one human being, by the way, I just got 4 donations during just everything you just said, 4 people.
Thank y'all for donating for Color of Change. Yeah.
So just if I touch one person and help one person understand better, I feel like I've done my job and used my vote. So why do you feel like this is finally striking a chord and people are starting to take it seriously?
I mean, I call this moment the perfect storm. We're in the middle of a double pandemic. We have the COVID-19 pandemic that has shut down the world, right? And then on top of it, we see what we've always seen, Black bodies being murdered, attacked in the streets, in broad daylight, videos coming out 2 or 3 months later, names popping up 2 or 3 months later. And I think the tipping point, the thing that made the volcano erupt was George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
Because it was in broad daylight. I think it's 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That he was hanging on to his life, that man had his knee on his neck. And so I think when we all saw that, or we heard about it, the world erupted. And because we're in the pandemic of COVID-19, ain't nobody got nothing to do. But to sit and think and say and process and say, okay, I have to do something about this. Whether it's just taking to the street, posting on Instagram, signing petitions, donating money to organizations that are fighting for change and fighting for policy and fighting for laws to change, or it's having conversations with your family, or educating yourself and learning about the history of this country, not just what they teach us in schools.
That's what Damian and I were just talking about. Exactly. Yeah. So talk to me about how you're doing a lot. It's a lot. You're putting out a lot. Mm-hmm. What are the things that you're doing besides having these conversations? Mm-hmm. Because I actually feel like it's not your job to be having these conversations.
No, it's not.
And I have been having a ton of conversations with friends, family, very open-minded friends that are confused by certain things. And I feel like it's the responsibility of white people to be having these conversations, or I should say non-Black people having these conversations, because anybody. But what are you doing and how are you feeling when you do have to have these conversations?
Every situation, every conversation is different. It depends on the person. You know, I've had people who follow me on Instagram or Twitter, and they drop in my DMs and they ask questions and they want to talk. And those people, I don't want to just shoo them away, because if in those moments I am available, if my cup is full, then I can pour a little bit into their cup. If not, I've done a lot of things on my Instagram page where I post a ton of books people can read, adults. I post a ton of books that parents can buy for their children and their adolescent kids, their teenagers. I post Black-owned businesses that people can support, podcasts that they can listen to, many different things like that. And I will continue to do that. So for those people, but if it's a friend of mine, I have to really make sure I am in the right frame of mind, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, to have those conversations. Because like I said with my father, bringing up certain things can be very triggering and traumatic to relive events or to tell stories. But I do think it is important, because I think there are a lot of white people and people of color out there that are like, what, racism? We live in a post-racial America. No, we don't.
No.
It exists. And people that you love and care about have gone through racist experiences and systematically have experienced racism. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to actually go back to your father and your mother because, like, I don't know if you heard my conversation with Damian, but one of the things I was telling him is that I recently just learned about Black families teaching their children about the police officers and how to act with the police, how to act when you encounter a police officer. And I talked about this a little bit with you yesterday when we were preparing this interview, and we ended up getting down the track of colorism. And I would like to talk about what you were taught about the place as a young girl and how colorism plays into this with your family, conversations with your family, conversations with friends. I'm very curious about that.
What was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
How your family talked to you about the police officers.
Police officers. Honestly, I think, we talked about this yesterday. They really didn't with me. I think more so with my brothers because they are men. They were boys at the time. And I should tell you, my brothers are 13 and 8 years older than me. So I came along and they were grown pretty much. And I grew up in a time where it was utopia in the world. America was living in this whole utopia system of like, I don't see color. And I think a lot of Black people went along with that because of assimilation and trying to fit in and be seen as not just 3/5 of a person, but an actual full living, existing, breathing human being. So they never really talked to me about the police. I guess my first time really realizing that maybe the police weren't here to protect Black folks is when my two best friends, their home caught on fire and they lived down the street from the police station fire department. And it took an hour for them to get there. And thank God they were able to climb out of a tiny door that they happened to have. And all 5 of them got out. But if they hadn't had that door, they would have died in there. And I never understood, I was in high school at the time, why did it take them so long? And this was a predominantly Black community, a middle class, upper class Black community. But like I told you yesterday, again, this was a community that was kind of set up as an experiment to see how middle, upper class Black folks live, breathe, survive. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's just so crazy, and I'm learning so much. And I mean, I asked Damian this, but how do you keep your positive spirit?
I have angry moments. I didn't sleep last night at all.
Because you're having these conversations with everybody. There's a lot on your mind.
Yeah, and I was walking my dog last night, and I've been doing these chats on Instagram with a lot of different Black folks that I love and admire. And I just walking my dog, and I was just crying because I don't think people really understand the fear that Black people live with. I am a woman of privilege, period, right? But I'm still a Black woman in America. And I live with fear that someone could bust into my house right now, kill me in my home that I paid for, and then call me all type of whatever's on the news. And then the world believes that because that's the first story that they receive about you, and that's to cover up what the people who have busted into my home have done wrong. Or just walking down the street, So that's a real fear that a lot of us live with. But I stay positive. I pray a lot. I meditate. I take baths. I go to Fort Tryon Park a lot with my dog Flower. I talk to my parents a lot, my brothers a lot. We have moments together. I try my best to get in touch with friends, and we hold each other and create space for one another. Yeah.
Beautiful. These conversations are, I am uncomfortable having these conversations because I'm always scared that I don't know enough and I'm going to ask the wrong question or I'm going to say and I am learning so much. So I really appreciate your generosity and your ability to speak so articulately and so clearly about this with such passion. I would like to give you the platform to talk about kind of whatever you want, whatever you feel my audience should hear and needs to hear. One of the things I would like you to talk about was growing up and your mom taking you to the mall.
Oh, yes. So we would go to the mall and I feel like most Black folk, I think other people of color too, have had this talk with their parents. But we would go, so we lived in a predominantly Black neighborhood and we would go, but the nice mall was in a predominantly white neighborhood. that had a ton of plantations in it and beautiful homes. Green Hills Mall in Nashville, Tennessee. And my mother would say to me, she would say, you know, don't go in here touching anything. Don't run off from me, and don't act a fool in front of white folks, you know? And I think that's something that's been passed down through our families, not just my family, but many families, because of slavery. And because slaves were taught to act a certain way. And that was just one thing that was passed along generation to generation if you wanted to get ahead. You know, there's something also that our parents always told us, you have to be 200 times better
Yes.
than anybody else.
Yes.
Because you're a Black and you are a woman.
Yep.
200 times better. So when I excel at something, I know that I deserve to excel at it because I have worked my butt off.
Yeah.
Not to say that anybody else hasn't, you know what I'm saying? But I've been taught, that's been ingrained into me.
Well, I saw you in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And I don't know if I have ever told you this. My very first job I ever had in New York was, it's not my very first job, but I was the person who sold the hearing aids at Broadway shows.
Yes, I love it.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Really?
Every night. I never told you this. I saw that show in Palace Theater every night, and I heard you sing your face every single night.
Oh, thank you.
And Jackie, I forgot her last name. I'm sorry.
Arnold.
Yes, Jackie Arnold. Thank you. And you absolutely excel at everything you do. And I am so honored to work with you and to continue to work with you. And I'm going to show a video at the end of my song, Be the Song, that Anastacia is very heavily featured in. And I would like people to see that because I want people to see you and share in your experiences. I want everyone to follow you on social media. What's your social media handle?
It's Anastacia MCC official. I was like, what is it? I don't know. Can I say one more thing before you play that real quick? I just want to tell people that if you are struggling with having those conversations with your family or your friends, stay grounded in yourself, stay grounded in the facts. Emotions sometimes can take over and we become misguided in conversation. But if you have the facts and you are focused and grounded and it's coming from a genuine place, you can have a beautiful outcome from those conversations, you know, and lead with love.
Yes. And that's what I really appreciate about you, because you just radiate positive energy and love. And you can't have those moments. You need to go and have your moments and be upset and cry and be angry and weep. But know that you are loved and know that there are people there for you who care for you, me included. And I'm going to send you those headphones to make you really
Thank you. Thank you.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stacey. I appreciate you. And thank you for all your.
Thank you.
Okay, so I hope that these conversations are helpful. I hope that you are inspired. I hope they're educational. I hope that they are healing for some people. I feel it is my responsibility to share and amplify as many Black voices as I can, the people I've worked with, and I would like to continue to use my platform to do that. So thank you for sticking around with us. Again, all of the donations tonight will go to Color of Change, so check your scroll bar at the bottom. So it's important to have these serious conversations. However, we should also be celebrating the light and the positivity. And today is the 6-year anniversary of my debut album, Where the Sky Ends. And I wanted to share a song from that album. I was going to do one song, and then I looked at the numbers, because I'm a numbers person, on Spotify, and I was so excited. My song Dare to Dream has just surpassed 1 million streams on Spotify, which I'm so excited by. So thank you to everyone for listening and getting that up there. And still, the biggest song, I don't know how or why, and I'm so grateful for it, Gone, is at 2 million streams, the regular version, just under 2 million. But the remix is over 2.1 million. So thank you so much for making these songs so well streamed. The entire Where the Sky Ends album as a whole is at 4 million streams. So half of that is just from Gone, and the rest are all broken down for the other 11 tracks. So with that, and knowing how popular Gone is, I thought, okay, I am going to perform Gone for my audience. So on the 6-year anniversary of Where the Sky Ends, this is Gone from Where the Sky Ends. This is your song, your style of music, though I can't sing it well. What the hell? Guess I'll give it a try, and with a sigh, it's yours. It's yours to keep. The benefits you'll reap are slim to none, but still this must be done. As I tell myself, dim the lights and go back to bed, blow the candles out and then drown the music out and sleep until the dawn. You said you'd always be my friend, but every flame is bound to end. I struck the match and you blew it out, now you're gone. Oh, after an afternoon, when you come back down, you said you'd be here waiting, celebrating what we had. Too bad the tables have turned around. You turned me away. I think about you every day, every minute. I still hear you say, oh, dim the lights and go back to bed, blow the candles out and then drown the music out and sleep until the dawn. You said you'd always be my friend, but every flame is bound to end. I struck the match and you blew it out, now you're gone. Now I'm sleeping a dream about you, 'cause I just can't live without you. You're the one that I adore, and this song right here is yours. Oh, drown the music out and sleep until the dawn. You said you'd always be my friend, but every flame is bound to end. I struck the match and you blew it out, now you're gone. Dim the lights, ooh, and sleep until the dawn. You said you'd always be my friend, but every flame is bound to end. I struck the match and you blew it out, now you're gone. I struck the match and you blew it out, now you're gone. Happy 6-year anniversary to Where the Sky Ends, and thank you for listening and streaming. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Just to wind things down, thank you to Damian and thank you to Stacy for having these conversations with me. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Again, you can donate to my Venmo, to my Cash App, or to my PayPal. And all of tonight's donations will go to Color of Change. So thank you so very, very much. I appreciate you all. And I would like to end tonight with the music video to my song, Be the Song. Stacy is featured in the music video, and the song encompasses unity, love, and a positive message. And I hope we all can come together and share that. So thank you all so much for joining me.
Tragedy, our cries seem all in vain, but I hear a melody, so join in my refrain, and we will sing, build the chords and hum along. Rearrange make a change. Be the song. Be the song. Be the song. Be the song. And for those who oppose all along, sing a little louder for the ones who got it wrong. In the name of every child who's lost their secret choice, silence speaks so loud and wild, so let us be their voice. And we will sing, hold the place where they belong, harmonize at their cries, be the song. Be the song, be the song, be the song. And for those who oppose all along, sing a little louder for the ones who got it wrong. In these desperate times of silence, when it seems we can't unite, be the voice of tomorrow. Stand and fight. Do what's right. Do what's right. We will magnify the morning like the sun from up above. We will shine from sea to shining sea to amplify our love. We will stand up to the violence of the hands upon the shore. For the ones who come tomorrow and the ones who came before. And for those who oppose all of, sing it louder, sing it louder, sing it louder, sing it louder, sing a little louder for the ones who got it wrong. Be the song, be the song, be the song. And for those who oppose all along, sing a little louder, sing a little louder. We sing a little louder for the ones who got it wrong. Rearrange and make a change. Be the song.